Welcome back to Talk Recovery. Little James Brown. Hope you all got off your thing there. Welcome back. We are now in studio live, still on air, but also inviting our Facebook friends live in the studio with us today for our personal guest here on Talk Recovery, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. So here we go. Giuseppe and I are going to trade camera spots here.
Hello, thanks Darren, thanks for listening, thanks for watching Facebook Live. We're coming to you live from the downtown east side on 100.5 FM. And don't forget, if you like our show, please support Co-op Radio at www.coopradio.org. And that's where you can look and see all the other shows that are on air. Talk Recovery is powered by New West Recovery, which is part of Last Door at Westminster House. And each show, every Thursday, we like to bring you a personal story of recovery. And we just finished talking to a wonderful organization called Dance Your Ability. And they do dance therapy to overcome mental health issues and addiction and so forth. So if you missed that part of the show, you can go back on iTunes, SoundCloud, and back to talkrecoveryradio.com. We repost all our shows there, and you can catch them and replay them. And we got Kris in studio today. Hello, Kris.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. If you can get closer to the mic,
sorry.
they're awesome. Thank you. Well, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
You know, I've known Kris for a while here, and we always think about addiction. We think of first of all, the substance, the drug or the alcohol or whatever the case may be, and then we think of the person. And, one thing that we try to do at this show and where I work and with some of the work that we do is it's way bigger than that. And there's families and there's communities and there's employers and there's just so much that we ripple effect in our using and so forth. And the same happens with recovery. And I know Kris because her son went through addiction. And tell us a little bit like what that was like when you, my son's in trouble.
Oh, yeah. So addiction is definitely a family disease, and part of that comes denial. We didn't really know that our son was in trouble. We knew something was wrong, but our plan was to send him off to university and move up here, and that would be it. The problem would be gone. We got him to university thinking that this would probably be the last time we'd ever see him. We didn't really know why, but we just felt like there was something really, really wrong. And then about 6 weeks into his university time, he called and called out for help, and we brought him back, and it was devastating. It was a time just full of so many different emotions, anger, confusion. We just didn't know what to do with him.
What were some of these? So for other moms that are listening, they have that little bit of a gut feeling. Like, did he get honest? Did he get caught? Did you like find stuff? Like,
oh my
what?
God,
like what?
Yeah. That's a challenge. So, as a rebellious teenager myself, I did lots of different things that I saw my kid kind of doing, but he wasn't doing them to the same extent that I was. So I thought, okay, it's just a phase. I would go in and check his room and find different types of paraphernalia, and I'm like, oh God, really?
Yeah.
And in hindsight, that was horrible. I should have made a big deal out of it. There were times when we did confront him, and we got the stereotypical, oh, it's my friends. I'm holding this for so and so, and I think that's where the denial also comes in. We just didn't. My husband and I didn't look at each other and say, oh my gosh, we have such a problem. We need to take control. We just kind of hoped that it would go away.
Is part of it because if you acknowledge that maybe you did something wrong? Like, is it one of those things like that we've got a great, perfect family? Like, this is just a phase? Like, is there a little bit of like, if he's got a problem, then I'm the problem? Is any of that?
That's a hard one. Yes and no. So, I was the kind of person that I liked to keep up appearances, and we didn't want anything wrong. We were by no means a perfect family, but other people would not have known that, I guess, unless they really knew us. And I think the more we kind of realized that something was going on, we kind of isolated too. And then our son became quite the master of triangulation, and so there was nothing happy going on in the family at all. And it was just like, hurry up, go to school, we're out of here, problem solved.
You know what, I remember hearing for the first time, like, addiction is not just the drugs, it's the laying around, it's the lying, it's all that other stuff that goes along with the fighting, and it's brushing everything off. And I remember being a tyrant and all that kind of stuff, and the drugs was just basically part of the story, but not the whole story. So it's time to get help. Did you already know everything, or were you
nothing. I knew nothing.
You knew nothing?
I was brand new to Vancouver. We had just moved here from the States. We had been here a month.
Oh,
that was
wow.
it. We had been here a month. So
way to go, make the move easy, eh?
No problem there.
Yeah.
My son and I are both dual, so we had the ability to get medical help here, but really this was so far off our radar. So when I went to go get my son, my husband was left with the task of figuring out what are we going to do with him when he came back. And the first thing he did was call some family friends that are doctors, and they couldn't tell us anything.
Weird, eh?
They just, all they could do was say, hey, bring him to VGH, have him checked out. So we did.
Which is probably the worst thing to do.
Well, yeah, because there's that whole Privacy Act, and the kid went in, forged my signature. Sorry, son. Forged my signature for me to be the one to pay the bill, and he was in that double door, and I was not allowed back there. Had no idea even what was going on, and this is a medical emergency. I needed to know. He was not in his sound mind. I have no idea what he was telling people. He didn't know what he really wanted. Well, he wanted help, but he was starting to think maybe I don't.
It's so common. People don't know what to do, and the first thing they do is they take him to the hospital. And the hospital isn't a biopsychosocial place. They're just like, here's a pill, go home.
So so after all the affair there, he came home, and we're like, so what went on? He became very comfortable. Went back down to the basement, became very comfortable there, but did say, I have to go to, am I allowed to say where? Rapid Access at St. Paul's, and I have an appointment. I said, okay, fine, all right,
that's
good, we'll go. Again, I drive him to St. Paul's the next day or whenever the appointment was, and I'm not allowed in. I'm not allowed to talk to anyone. This is my child who's 18, and
how did that feel?
Horrible, absolutely horrible. And I'm looking around, and I'm reading every sign on the wall, and okay, is there some information? They had a little bit of information about a program. I can't remember what it's called, but there were no 12-step, no information about 12-step programs. There was, I think it's called the SMART program, something like that. And then there was all sorts of signs and whatnot about where to get clean drugs and this and that, and as a parent that just made me freak out even more. And so Jackson came out of the program and out of the first appointment, and he's like, they want me to get a skateboard and go on Suboxone, and that's it. I'll come back in a week.
So, this is about your story. Did anybody come out of the waiting room and say, hey, are you the mom? Do you need any help?
No one did.
So 14,000 dead Canadians since 2016, and no one is even hospitals, emergency rooms. Nobody said, hey, do you need a hand? No one. No one
came out to give us brochures, to give us any kind of links of where we could find help for ourselves. Where we could get support. There was nothing. In fact,
that makes me pretty. I get choked when I hear that.
Yeah.
And the reason why you're on the show is because you know, you've been empowered.
Yes.
You know, your son is a good news story. You know, your son is in recovery, and has he hit a year yet? Or,
Yeah, almost 14 months. So.
Almost 14 months, right on. You know, it's great to hear that. Do you feel that your son got rescued out of healthcare, or did the healthcare system help him get 14 months clean?
No, we did.
You did.
We did in our treatment center that we found for him, for sure. Yeah.
And you did that all on your own?
I did. It became my full-time job because the longer he was in our house, the more comfortable he became and the less he wanted help anymore. And there was no way.
Pretty
was no
weird,
way.
eh?
Yeah.
It's just like, what is happening? Like I get prescription oats, like OATs. Like I get all that, and I get the emergency and the crisis, and we gotta get, like, your kid's a kid, you know, and like it's just unbelievable. We're like during the AIDS crisis, when that was a crisis, like everybody rallied together. The people with the disease, the people with HIV, their families. Like there was just this overwhelming hug for the entire community. Here, it's like you're not even spoken to. Like you're not even allowed to be in the room, Mom. Like get out of here.
And they would tell me that. So I would.
And they would tell you that.
Well, yeah. I would go up to the window where the receptionist is and say, you know, I'm sorry, my son's in there. You know, can you please give me some information about where I can go because we really want to get him into treatment. Blah blah blah. Oh, sorry, we can't release any information. We can't talk to you about any of this.
And I get that, privacy, but they still don't say, hey, here's
No.
a brochure for you.
No.
Like,
no.
that's the problem. Like, I get the privacy issue, and, like, the BCCSU and St. Paul's Hospital Foundation, like, I know them. I'm actually probably going to send a link to this interview to them. Like, I know who runs them, because I didn't even know that's going on. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. So that needs to change. So now you're a mom. You got help.
Yes.
Okay, what did you do to get help?
Well, I didn't really know that I needed help. It was my child who had the problem, not me, of course. The treatment center where my son was had a family support group, and that was where I first started. And I didn't know anyone up here at all, so I was calling my friends at home and calling my brother, and getting strange advice like. You know, maybe if you had more family dinners or if you had done this or that, this wouldn't have happened, and that wasn't what I needed. And it was actually my brother, ironically, who said, Kris, you need to go to a Narnon meeting. You need help, and you need people that will understand you and be able to guide you.
And that's what you did.
I did, yeah.
And
it's been great. For me, it worked, or it is working. But two things actually. So I was going to the family group that the treatment center provided. I was going to my Narnon meetings, but I still didn't really understand that it was me that needed help.
yeah, because your son can stay clean forever.
Right.
Your son might relapse.
Yeah.
Your son, you know, who knows what will happen in this
Exactly.
world, but you needed to make sure that you're okay
Right.
with all those
Right.
outcomes.
It wasn't until I went to this family enhancement program where I was basically told this is what you need help with, and that my eyes kind of became open. And then also at that same enhancement program, it was like a camp for adults, and it was the first time that I can remember in I don't know how long, just laughing and crying
And being vulnerable
and having so much fun. And I hadn't felt that kind of joy and happiness. And that's when I realized the main component that I was missing was a support network. And I made it my mission. I am going to find people, and I did. Yeah.
One wonderful thing that I know that you're working on is, you know, all due respect to Mom Stop the Harm, you know, there's a tragedy out there. Lots of people are dead.
Yeah.
And Mom Stop the Harm has a mandate and so forth, and there are pushes for prescription heroin and safe supply and that part of the continuum. I don't really see a lot of things coming through their pages encouraging abstinence or encouraging the continuum of care that includes abstinence, and that's fine, you know, like I get it. And so we were talking to I go to a lot of stakeholder meetings Now you're part of a potentially new group advisory for moms with kids that are alive and
Yeah.
moms with kids that like you don't really want a safe supply for your son maybe and so forth. And what does that conversation look like? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a
It's
sensitive
tough.
one. It's a sensitive one. I did man the memorial tree this summer a number of times, and the first
At
time
Recovery
at
Day.
Recovery Day, and when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's so beautiful. And then when I started reading the leaves and hearing the stories, I realized, wow, this is very, very emotional and painful. But then at Recovery Day, when I looked around, I realized then that there's 30,000 people here that are either in recovery, allies of recovery, or want to recover. And that's 30,000 people just in this area. And why aren't we celebrating and showing the faces of all the people that are in recovery and are on their recovery journey? I just
Hope.
hope. It's hope. That's what it is. It's hope.
It's what makes it so when you go to rapid access, it's not like, this non-culture sensitive, community sensitive approach. It's so medicalized that it's like, but addiction's not all this medical stuff's gonna fix it. You need everything.
It's medicalized, but it's also very individual. And what I've learned, and even it was just said in the last interview. It's connectivity and community. And when I was in that rapid access, I was sitting there by myself, and there were lots of doctors and future doctors running around talking about different things, but I was just ignored.
Not talking to you.
No, I was just ignored. And I feel that the same way about prescription heroin, etc. I feel like it's just going to continue to make people isolated.
We have a lot of common friends, and where their sons are clean, and there's that conversation always where we wish we can bring back all of our friends that have died, and it's one of those things that Safe Supply in Switzerland is not the same version of what Canada's Safe Supply is going to be. Because in Switzerland, you wouldn't walk into a clinic and not have family supports. Like in Switzerland, it's much different. It's going to be part of the movie that we're working on called Crisis, and the version that we're doing, if Safe Supply was around right now, where your son would be able to just grab Safe Supply, where do you think you'd be right now?
I think it would be a circle that wouldn't end.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, you had to pay to go to treatment,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so you privately
Big time.
paid. So here's the other part of this two-tiered healthcare system. It's like to get out of where you were in Vancouver's healthcare system, you had to pull out a credit card and pay to go to private treatment, which a lot of people don't have the privilege to do when it comes to youth.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah, there's only a few youth treatment beds in this entire province and this country, to be honest with you.
That was a challenge finding the right one, because in the States at 18 you are a legal adult, and here it's 19 when you become the age of majority.
Yeah,
so,
at 18 you're a youth. You have to go to a youth facility.
And I would call, there weren't any listed other than ones that were way up in the boonies somewhere, up in the woods and the mountains, and that to me didn't seem like the right environment. Again, you're not getting any kind of connectivity, and then I don't know how the family's going to be able to help out at all.
I was talking to somebody that runs a anyway, it's a wilderness program. You go out in the woods for like 2 months. I'm like, the kid doesn't need trees. The kid needs friends.
Yeah.
He doesn't need trees.
No.
Like maybe a 3-day retreat, but like 2 months in the middle of the woods, like, what's he gonna do? Like be friends with trees? It just didn't make any sense. Trees are not gonna, call you on your shit on a Friday night.
No, but I did, there were a lot of places that I called, and they said, well, we're an adult facility, and I would say, well, this is the age of my kid. Is your clientele, is there anyone in his age range? And most people would say no, and I said, well, that's not going to work either, because this is going to be a lifelong journey, and is he going to connect with people my age? Probably not so much.
Well, I really appreciate the fact that you're now becoming an advocate. You went through what you shouldn't have had to go through what you went through. And it's a symbol of why we're in a crisis. You have fentanyls on the streets and that's actually killing people, but there's a reason why this has all happened, and it's because of stories like this. Like, you shouldn't have had to go through that. It should have been a family conversation. I went to Portugal. It's a family conversation. Like, not only is addiction a family disease, but the recovery process in Portugal is a family system.
Right.
And I wish we could do that here, but we're not doing that here yet. So with your, activism and with some other moms, you're just at the beginning, and hopefully you get some more support and so forth, but also get listened, because your story matters. So we've only got a couple minutes left here. There's a mom out there. She's just beside herself. Like, her son's on the street. He's on the street using. She doesn't have a credit card. She's not able to get the kid in treatment, and she's being, pushed around in the healthcare system that we got. What do you suggest?
That's a tough one. I mean, honestly and truly, I'm still at a loss, just like everyone else. It's what I would suggest for her at the moment is really find supports to help her for her, because I don't know enough yet to help other people. There just isn't anything out there. I was at this a meeting to kind of discuss. I'm having a brain fart.
That's
sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
I just said that on the radio. Sorry, everyone. It happens to us sometimes. Just kind of discussing what a good therapy model might look like, and everyone that was there, the whole panel that was there, this was it. We were all very aware that to this day, unless you do have a credit card and a big fat wallet, you're not necessarily going to be able to get immediate help. And when help does finally come, it might be just too late. I hear stories again in just from my family support group where parents had called up different detox places, and it wasn't until like 3-4 weeks into their son's treatment that the detox center finally called them and said, hey, we have room for you now. So I guess the harm reduction will keep people alive, but what we need is if someone really screams out, hey, I do want to break from this, I do want help, that there's a team that can just rush right in and
For the whole family,
yeah. Right? Tell the family this is what you need to do. Don't worry, we got your child. We're gonna, do what we can right now, but in the meantime, this is what you can do.
It's going to be a journey.
Yes.
It's going to be a challenge, and it shouldn't have to be, but, we really appreciate the courage that you have to come on radio and talk about your story, because a lot of people don't. They like, this is just something we want to keep on the down low, and that's the real stigma of addiction, It's just like people don't want to talk about it, and even when they're in recovery, they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And with stories like yours, hopefully that will change, and somebody else will get the ability to say, hey, you know what, son, like, we're gonna go get help. I'm gonna go get help, and you can join me in that recovery journey or not. You know. Darren, our cameraman, I'm going to grab it. We're going to be closing up the show. Thank you so much, Kris.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you to our first guest, Shauna Devlin from Dance Your Ability. Thanks for tuning in Facebook, and those of you listening to us on the radio. We're going to leave today with a little Canadian group, Current Swell, We Will Run. Vancouver Cult Radio, CFR 100.5 FM. This has been Talk Recovery. See you next week.
Thanks,
Kris. That was awesome.
Did you okay?
You did great.
My brain fart.
You did great. You did great.
People can relate to
Blah,
that.
blah, blah, blah.
People can relate.